Welcome to another insightful episode of Me and My Health Up. I'm your host, Anthony Harcher. I'm a clinical nutritionist and lifestyle medicine specialist. And today's episode is super exciting because I have two guests on with me today. So very excited by that. It's the first time I'm doing it, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it even more. The first guest is Jo Barnett. Jo Barnett is the CEO of Emergence Coaching and has huge and vast experiences in the area of human behaviour, and will be sharing with us her expertise on fear and how fear can lead us astray and how to not let fear get in the way of you achieving your goals. So that's certainly the topic today. And Raoul is my intern. So it's such a great delight of mine to have my intern here with me today and being part of the podcast. And Raoul's going to share with you his background. So he has some Navy experience. He's actually in the Navy, the US Navy, and he's joining us from Phoenix, Arizona. So welcome, Jo, and welcome, Raoul. How are you today?
Well, thank you so much, Anthony. It's absolute pleasure to be here with you today to be talking about this and obviously spreading the word during these times.
Awesome. And Jo, whilst we got you on the mic, can we just hear a little bit about your story, about how you have arrived at doing what you're doing today?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I've had, after almost 20 years in the corporate world, and I was doing a lot of management, and I've got a, degree in HR, and I was doing a lot around corporate change, people change and looking at change. And during this time, I actually experienced my own personal change and challenge. I was faced with a 3-year-old daughter that was diagnosed with a life-threatening condition, and that was very overwhelming. And as much as I thought I was coping, it was not until many years after the event that I realized I probably wasn't. Also, at the same time, I lost my husband. So I became a mother with 2 young kids who, again, was not coping. But I wasn't. And for me, it's been a journey to discover mindset. And I've used this mindset, that my own mindset and how the mind works, how we focus on our goals, how we focus on getting through change and challenge. And I've looked at this and applied it also into the corporate world, and why our change programs maybe not succeeding, and how we can work with people to get around change resistance. And one of those key things around resistance is fear. And so all of this experience has led me to become a coach. I'm now a master NLP coach, hypnotherapy, timeline therapy, and create your own future. These are all powerful techniques that work with the subconscious, with the neurology, and they bring around fast, effective, and permanent change with behavior and the way the behavior links to emotion. So we do very much focus on the emotional based side of change.
Fantastic. Thanks for sharing that, Jo. And it's incredible how our journey, we never have the foresight of how our life's going to unfold. But we just need to take each day as it comes. And you've certainly gone with what you've been dealt with, in terms of tragedies, and done the best you can with those situations. And growing as a person and also as a leader in this space to really help others navigate through their life challenges. So, well done, Jo. And Raoul, welcome. And please tell us a bit about your background, just so the listeners know where you've come from. And, just please share.
Hello, Anthony. Thank you for having me today. As Anthony mentioned, I am a current intern for me&my Wellness, and through Arizona State University. I've been attending Arizona State University for 4 years. Also, I am an active duty United States Navy sailor, as he mentioned. Just growing up, it was something that I've always wanted to do, was give service to my country and my nation, and I do that proudly.
Well done, and it's such a great honour to be giving back in such a way. So, congratulations on embarking on that giving back so early on in your life. A lot of us don't realise that it's an important aspect of life is to give back, and we stumble upon it later on in life, whereas you found it in such youth. So well done on having that really giver's attitude. So back to you, Jo. Please share with us more about how fear holds us back and how we can better understand when fear sets upon us, and then what we can do to better manage it and better deal with it so it can become our ally as opposed to our foe.
Absolutely. And having spent a lot of time in this fear-based area after all my experiences, I realized that it does go on to impact your body. So as a coach, I now look at how the brain triggers fear, or how fear is triggered in the brain, a better way to speak. And we know that the amygdala is a little small almond part of our brain, and it is directly involved in recognizing danger and fear. Now, different people have different levels, and it's going to be triggered differently in different people, which is why we see some people experiencing fear more than others. So we look at the way this works, and when fear is triggered in our brain, it then triggers the release of a hormone, a stress hormone in our body called cortisol. Now, anyone who is suffering from health conditions would understand the role of too much cortisol, because in the short term, what it's designed for is to get us moving, to respond to danger, to avoid it, to get out of the way. It's when we have too much for too long. And we see that in our day-to-day lives because our brain and our amygdala is recognizing stress all the time in our everyday lives, and we're having too much cortisol build up in our body. So this is where we can see things like mood irregularities, low energy, poor quality sleep, and of course, this overwhelming stress and anxiety. So this is how fear is working today. And then we look at, well, how does fear then lead into uncertainty? Well, when we can't regulate this fear, when it's ongoing, we develop, as we mentioned, stress, anxiety, and in some cases that then develops into severe phobias, which completely makes us become stuck. It damages our relationships, the way we relate to others, our moods, and all these things. And then it starts to damage our health. From a mindset perspective, though, we also start to set limitations, and really we shrink in our boundaries because we're starting to feel these fears, these constant fears make us feel like we're not safe constantly. And that's not healthy. Because when we don't feel safe, we don't want to step out of our comfort zone. And we all know that the magic happens the minute we step out of our comfort zone. So when we're in this safe zone for too long, we stop looking. We stop looking for new opportunities. We stop setting goals for ourselves. We stop striving for new and better things. We stop being in the driver's seat because we're not putting in the direction where we want to go. So I guess then we look at, well, fear and uncertainty. Well, we know how fear is triggered. We know how it keeps us in our comfort zone. And being in our comfort zone then means that we can't set goals. And not setting goals means that we start to lack purpose over time. We have a buildup of cortisol in our body. So we're in this constant fight-flight mode, which we know was designed for short bursts to get us out of danger, to keep us safe. So this is where we are with fear and uncertainty. And really, one thing we've got to understand is there's always risk in life. There's always danger in life. And then it comes back down to, well, how do we manage that? And I'm sure Raul has a story where he can share with us where fear and this fight-flight mode has kicked in for him. And I'd be interested to understand how he's potentially managed that those situations?
Absolutely, Joe. So when I was 19 years old, um, I was deployed on a vessel um, across the world. And being 19, that alone was kind of big and daunting for me. And just, again, the feeling of uncertainty, you don't know where you're going to go, how long you're going to go. And that alone kind of just doesn't like sit right. It makes you kind of feel anxious and uncomfortable because I think a lot of times us as humans, we don't like when we don't know things. We don't like the unknown. And so for me, what I had to do was, one, just keep myself busy. Um, and then, whether that be, working out, reading, because there is some downtime that you have when you're deployed. But like you're saying, a story, there was a story that my flight or flight kicked in, and it was we were training for several months prior to deployment, and you never think too much about your training, and you never really think, am I actually going to use this training? And now my specialty in the Navy is medical hospital corpsman, which is essentially a medic. And so we prepare for all this trauma training before we deploy, and even while you're deployed, and you never really think, man, I'm going to use this training. And so, well, one day, there's a lot going on, and they say, "Hey, get ready. It's happening today." And then, our whole medical team, we set up all of our equipment. We prepare to receive some casualties from land, and I just remember like feeling like my heart just pumping, like, man, like, am I really gonna do this right now? Am I gonna be able to uh, help save lives and sustain lives, and get us back in the fight, essentially? And it was something I didn't think I could do, but it was one of those things, when it happened, my body just kind of took over. And having the training, you don't think that you'll be ready, but I think just the constant repetitive, along with the adrenaline rush and all these things going through your head, you're going through and looking back, um, that those scenes were something embedded into my brain that I'll always have for the rest of my life.
Yeah, you don't wish that upon anyone. Certainly, Rao. Was there anything particular that stood out for you in your training that really helped you in that moment?
Absolutely. One of the biggest things is just staying calm. Remaining calm, thinking, hey, what am I doing? What's the next step? Just really focusing on the moment and what you're doing in that set moment. Because when you're not calm, that's when everything gets hectic. Whether that's communication with the team, because emotions are flying high, especially something um, that intense. So I think for me, just remaining calm and focusing on the moment and what you're doing right then and there.
And have you got particular techniques that you draw upon to keep yourself calm in those situations?
Some breathing techniques, Anthony. Breathing techniques myself. Really just it sounds simple, but taking a inhale, exhale, like, hey, I'm okay. I got this. I know what I'm doing. Because a lot of the times we do know what we're doing, and especially whether it's school, um, in your profession, I think we are trained, but when certain occasions arise, we do get overwhelmed, and we just need to sit back, like, hey, take a deep breath. I'm okay. I know what I'm doing.
And Joe, in your field of work, is this the first point or the first step that you need to take with your client or the corporation in terms of calming their nervous system, getting them ready to receive new information on how to move through this crisis? What's the process in your field of work?
Absolutely. It's actually been found that a lot of people in high stress and anxiety lack oxygen in their brain. And it's because we stop breathing deeply. And breathing, and I guess this is why we encourage meditation, where we slow our body down. And we start to be able to, when we slow our body down, which is releasing that cortisol, we start to be able to think more rationally. Because when we're in this fight flight, we sometimes don't think rationally, which is why I guess in different types of military training, they try over and over and over again, because in that moment, you just need to know what to do, because you may not have your rational thought. But I guess when we look at day-to-day living in our world, sometimes we're not dealing with just one thing. And this is where we can become overwhelmed with prolonged and sustained fight flight. And again, some of the things we can recommend is finding ways to relax. Now, whether that's deep breathing and meditation, whether it's listening to music, laughter is a great medicine. And laughter actually gets lots of oxygen into the body and calms us down. It also helps us to de-stress and become distracted, which Ray also mentioned. This distraction is really important. And so we can start to calm our body that way and find a healthy way to relax. And I do stress healthy, because a lot of people, their first thought is to find relaxation, and they don't do it in a healthy way. So it doesn't actually support their recovery. One of the other things that's really, really important is about reframing. And this is a really important aspect of what I do with my clients. Reframing is looking at the situation with a different perspective. Okay, so we can ask, well, what if this happens? What if this happens? And we can be stressed. But we can also ask, what if it doesn't happen? I remember an old friend saying to me, when you stress, when you worry too much, you're paying interest on a loan you haven't even taken out, because it hasn't happened, which means it may never happen, which means you're putting all this energy into something that may never eventuate. So reframing is really important, and using affirmations. So start saying, this is what I do want. This is where I'm going, in a positive way. Use positive language, not negative language. And start to ask yourself, how much of this is real? Is this really happening? Because danger is real. Okay, but fear is a construct of what we think is going to happen. And so it gets us moving. So we need to start thinking in a different way and reframing and questioning our thoughts. Are we talking about avoidance language, where we're trying to constantly avoid something? Or are we talking about, okay, yes, I can do this. We just need to, like Rael said, stay calm, stay focused. Another important thing to do is to continue to maintain our healthy relationships and stay in our own energy. Staying in our own energy is so important, because during stressful times, often we are influenced by everything that's going on around us. So we can tend to bring on other people's fear, stress, and anxiety. And we've actually seen a lot of that over the last 2 years during this pandemic. What's really important is you stay in your own energy and say, okay, this is what I need to do right now, and be in control of that. Try not to be influenced by other people's stress and anxieties, because that's their perceptions of what's going on. And of course, Anthony, you would know, sleep, diet, and exercise. How critical is that to reducing cortisol in your body?
Absolutely, Jo. It's fundamental. Studies have shown, a poor night's sleep can really elevate cortisol, which affects what you eat. So you've got this roll-on effect. So you have a bad night's sleep, and going back, a bad night's sleep can be caused through a traumatic incident, can be caused through past incidents, past memories. So this is, I'm going to flick over to Raoul shortly, but in terms of, once you have that good night's sleep, you're going to make better eating decisions the next day, because our mind is thinking rationally, a lot more rationally, less irrationally. It's not craving glucose, so to speak. So when we have high cortisol in our body, we'll have blood sugar dysregulation, particularly prolonged high cortisol. So initially it's fine, what the big concern is around stress and sleep and the implications is prolonged cortisol. So stress is a completely normal state to go in when you're uncertain, absolutely, and what helps us get out of really bad situations. So what helps get blood to the muscles, oxygen to the muscles, get energy to the muscles, so that we can get away from really bad situations. What is not good is a prolonged living in that state of fear, stress, and that's when you're going to get this blood sugar dysregulation. That's when you're going to have a high propensity to store fat, and a high need for more high calorific foods, because that's what your brain's telling you need more of. So our brain is always going to drive this preservation mode. So preservation, in a sense, how can I keep this body going under this prolonged stress? So it's just looking about survival and nothing else. It's not worried about whether you gain weight, and I'm sure you have that concern personally, but your mind doesn't think that way. It's thinking, well, how can I keep this person alive for longer? Yes, I'm going to slow down the metabolism. I'm going to store a bit more to fat cells, because I don't know how long this is going to last, and from the brain's in terms of how it perceives and responds, it doesn't know, whether it's a famine or whatever. It's just a stress event. So let's get back to Raoul, because I was thinking that in that situation where you're dealing with extreme trauma and you just go into this autopilot of operation, because you've been, it's just muscle memory work, so to speak. You're just repetitive, and you just go into this mode, this zone. You get yourself in the zone by getting in the here and now and focusing on what you know, and just keep doing that, and that gets you through that traumatic experience. But then I'm thinking the aftermath is probably where the challenge arises, because you're through the situation, you've helped a lot of people, you've done your best, you're quite proud of yourself, but those memories that you said that you never thought you'd see and hoped you'd never see can be life lasting. And getting back to what Jo was saying was that some of your work, Jo, is help reframing how we think about that event, and that really helps with a person to move on and not sort of stay in that sort of trauma phase. So, Raoul, please feel free to add anything. I certainly don't want to bring up this event too often with you, but certainly if you can, if you have anything to share, please share it.
Yes. So you talked about the aftermath, and yes, I that was hard for myself and a lot of my shipmates, because it was again something that a lot of us that have not experienced before. And I just remember us sitting there once the event concluded, and it just complete silence. But it's just crazy, because silence can mean so much sometimes, and I never felt silence be so loud either, if that makes any sense. But we're just sitting there, and even just little things like, hey, you guys want to go eat? And we're just like, no, I'm all right. We didn't want to eat. Some of us couldn't sleep. Some of the things you mentioned that get rid of the cortisol, it just wasn't there. We lost because we didn't have that drive, and just such a big, I guess, tragedy that happened in our lives. It was just kind of really taken over for a few days, for myself at least. I didn't sleep well. I didn't eat well. I didn't work out. I didn't really do anything. I kind of just was just there. But yeah, that was an experience that, I mean, the aftermath was, again, like you said, it was it took a little bit of a toll on me. So.
And what have you done since then to help you sort of move on? Have you done any work in that, dealing with it?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of time heals. Time heals, and so you just kind of, and when you learn, And two, I think you just kind of um, just remember and really just grow from that situation. It's something that I don't like to say I've been a part of, but it's something, I can trust my skills. It's something I could say I could trust my skills and abilities if I was ever in a situation um, where lives were on the line. And so God forbid I am ever in something like that again, but I at least know, that I can get through it.
Yeah, so you have done some reframing in a sense that you now got more belief and confidence in, having experienced that situation, and so that you now know if that comes up again, that you believe in yourself that you can do it, so there'll be less uncertainty certainly in that situation again, which is a really good thing. And Jo, you've obviously had personal tragedy hit you as well, and obviously there is that element of time heals, but plus you've done all your training on top of that. How have you really, I guess, leveraged the training you've learned to really help yourself? And was there anything specific in that training that really helped you sort of grow from the tragedy that you experienced?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned my daughter was critically ill. I spent probably a minimum of 2 years that were really quite full on, if I can say that, when my body was in fight flight, and I was living day to day, loads of cortisol in my body. At the time, I didn't even realize it. And I think this is the thing about stress, is that when you're in a situation, it feels like it's creeping up on you. So it's really important for people around you to take an external view. And I wish I had that external view and someone said to me, hey, this is what's going on. Because when you're in it, you can't see it. You're just exactly what Rael said. What do I need to do right now to solve this problem? My daughter's life was at risk. And it was my job, working with other people, to get her through that, as well as all the other things that you need to do in day-to-day life. And absolutely, I can appreciate what you were saying there. After you come out of sustained fight or flight, you do feel exhausted. Your body is completely exhausted because it's been in this heightened state. And then it just feels like, oh, I just need to rest. And that's okay, because it probably does just need to rest right then and there. And it's okay, and you should allow your body to do that. I found that some of the techniques that I use in my coaching, NLP, timeline therapy. Now, timeline therapy in particular is what enabled me to have really fast and permanent healing. And the reason for that is that it works on the negative emotions that you associate to certain triggers or certain events that happen for you. And for me, I found every time my daughter even sneezed, I would go into panic. Oh my goodness, is she sick again? And it was this constant panic building up in my body. So I had developed quite a lot of anxiety around that, whereas I shouldn't have, because that situation had cleared, it had resolved, and I was still being triggered. So this process, timeline therapy, is so powerful. It goes to the source. It goes to the source, the emotion that is triggering the anxiety, and it can permanently change or delete it from your neurology. Now, that doesn't mean the event doesn't disappear. It doesn't mean that you no longer learn what you need to learn, or have the skills, but you dissolve the negativity that's causing that emotion. Now, for me, going through that process was what enabled me to transform my life. It enabled me to completely reinvent my business, and I found new purpose in helping others overcome these challenges like I went through. And also through the process of goal setting. So I use a process, Create Your Own Future, again, where you're really building out now. Okay, this has happened. I've dissolved the negative emotions, but I've learned what I need to learn from it. How do I need to move forward? Where do I want to be? What do I want? Instead of constantly saying all these things have happened to me, which keeps us in that victim mentality, we start to build out a new narrative to say, okay, these things happened. I've learnt these lessons. I've resolved these negative emotions I had about them. How do I use these now in a positive way to move forward with purpose? And a part of that for me was reinventing my health and wellness, because going through, this medical emergency taught me a whole lot about health and wellness and enabled me now to live better, to live more well. And for me, what is really key, because of my own mental health and what was happening at that time and the fear and anxiety I experienced, mindset and coaching, and the fact that I was already working in the change field, for me, it carried through. And that's really important to me. And it's now very much a purposeful thing for me, because these things can be easily changed with professional help and in a permanent way. We just need to seek out the right help that's right for us. And of course, it has to be at the right time. Okay, we have to go. Sometimes we need to process certain things before we put up a hand and say, okay, I'm ready to now let go. I'm ready to move forward. I'm ready to use these experiences in a positive and purposeful way.
And before I ask you how the listeners can get in contact with you, reach out and get the support that you can provide to anyone that's struggling and certainly struggling to move forward based on what we've just been through in terms of what we're still going through, a pandemic, and all those things that it brought with it. I'd just like to go over to Raoul and ask him, do you have any questions about Jo's work that she does in terms of helping people post that traumatic event, in terms of guiding them through it and helping them get the best out of what happened?
No, I would just, well, I guess I do. I guess the first thing would be like, what is the number one thing that you would recommend for people to do immediately after the situation?
I believe timeline therapy is critical to do as quickly after a very traumatic experience. And the reason for that is that our mind, particularly in particular, a reticular activating system, as you probably are aware. Now that's the part of our brain that starts to focus on something and it starts to see it everywhere. So if we have a traumatic event and we lock in a particular, we associate something negative with that event, we will then start to look for it everywhere, which means we see what we're looking for, which means we now start to set ourselves up to see this negativity everywhere. I would strongly recommend that any traumatic event you need to resolve that negativity linked to that event. Otherwise, there's a very high chance that you will keep repeating it and experiencing negativity, and it will start to show up in your life in different ways. And it's very interesting the way that some of these situations evolve, if you like. I once was working with a lady who found herself in blacking out in stressful situations, did not know why. And it came back to when she was very young, and there was a lot of fighting around her that she didn't want to be a part of, which she found very stressful. And so she decided at that time to just block out what was happening. And so now, as an adult, she finds herself just blocking out when she's at work in stressful situations. This is the way these things can show up in our life a long, long, long way down the track. And we don't necessarily, we're not able to make the link straight away. So I would recommend that as soon as there's a highly traumatic event, that you resolve that negativity. And yes, you deal with the what's happened and you recognize what's happened, but you also break that chain of events that you might start.
Thanks, Jo. And Raoul, have you got any concluding words you'd like to wrap up your first podcast with Me and My Health Up?
No, I do not. Thank you, Jo, for your insight, and thank you, Anthony, for having me.
You're welcome, Raoul. It's great to have you on the show, and what an experience, and certainly really enjoyed doing the having the two guests on. Jo, I'd really like you to just let listeners know how they can best contact you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, feel free to go to my website, emergencecoaching.com.au. All the information's there and all the contact details, so you can get in contact with me. And I'd love to be able to chat and speak about the specific problem or issue that anyone might like to work on. And I'd love to thank Raoul for sharing his story and being really open and transparent. I know that that's sometimes a difficult thing to do. So thank you again for being involved and sharing that.
And thank you both for joining the show. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you both on. It's been a very insightful conversation. I've learned a lot, and thanks for being so open and sharing, I guess things that haven't been great in your life, but it really helps people understand that you've walked the path and that you've navigated through it, and you've shared what has worked for you, which is what this podcast is all about. It's all about enhancing and enlightening the well-being of others. And listeners, thanks for tuning in for another episode. I really appreciate your support, and stay tuned in for more insightful episodes of Me and My Health Up.